9:17 here on the morning show with Jeff and Will. It's AM 1700 WRCR Haverstraw. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Tina Traster now joins us. She from rcbizjournal.com. Welcome, Tina. How are you?
I am lovely. How is everybody this morning?
It's lovely to hear you're lovely. We're doing lovely here as well. It's lovely to be lovely.
All right. I've got a lot I want to cover. I'm going to just jump in, okay?
I assume it's lovely stuff.
You can judge that at the end.
Okay.
So there's an important application before the Clarkstown Planning Board that's coming up this Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And this is not about synagogues or mosques or churches. It's about land use in a town that is increasingly under development stress. The ICR, which stands for the Islamic Center of Rockland, which is situated on Mountainview Avenue in Valley Cottage. That's the road that runs between, people know it as the road that runs between Christian Herald and the Thruway, or Route 59. Okay, so at the very, very top of the mountain, the mosque has a building that's about 10,000 square feet, and that was built many years ago, about 15 years ago. And now the organization wants to build an additional 30,000 square foot structure, kind of think of like a Walmart maybe size, for multiple uses, and add 200 parking spaces literally at the top of a mountain in a conservation zone on what is probably the most dangerous road, at least in Clarkstown. It's just on the face of it, the application is just drastically oversized for the mountaintop location, and the additional traffic would bring, Mountain View Avenue basically to a halt, as it does every Friday afternoon when the congregants roll out, and the road between the mosque and the Thruway is at a standstill every Friday afternoon all year round. But this aside, because applications come to the town board, and the town board seems to have just, one retort, which is our hands are tied, because traffic never seems to be a compelling enough reason to require a rigorous environmental study or to actually to deny an application. But in this case, it's different, because this aside, the application has town-wide implications, because it will be the first to challenge a 2016 law that Clarkstown passed, which changed the zoning code. And the change allowed houses of worship in Clarkstown's residential zones, but only in a zone that is on a state or county road, and Mountain View Avenue is not a state or county road. Now, here's something disturbing. History shows us that Supervisor George Homan can grandstand in favor of a law like this zoning code, or term limits for that matter, when it becomes politically inconvenient to support a law. He'll do it about face. And in this case, although he has no role in the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Department, he's begun spreading the notion into the community that the ICR has quote-unquote grandfather status, and that status would exempt the applicant from the law that he's pledged to stand behind. Now, at a recent public town board meeting, he had two positions. One, if he would support the law. One asked if he would support the law. He'd say, yes, I support the law. And the other is laying the foundation for this exemption by saying, oh, well, the mosque is grandfathered. Now, why would he do this? Well, at the very least, by telegraphing the word grandfathering, it's probably meant to tamp down the growing opposition to this expansion, and it sets the stage for the planning board to simply absorb this disinformation. Now, let's discuss the reality of the situation. Let's talk about some facts. When the ICR built its mosque, it was zoning compliant, but the law has changed. And now it's considered what's known as a pre-existing non-conforming use as built. But pre-existing non-conforming uses cannot be modified or expanded without variances. And the variance would change the use. So they can continue as they are, but any expansion, as they're proposing, would be considered a new application and subject to a new zoning law that we discussed at the top of this segment. And
you're suggesting they would need a variance then?
They need many variances because what they're proposing is for all kinds of area variances and all sorts of variances, but they would also need a use variance.
So are they not seeking this variance, or are they looking to go straight to say, we want to build this, let us build it?
Yes, they're looking to, yes, they claim that they don't need a variance. And
and what's been the response to that?
Well, we know this from their application. They have not had their first airing yet, and that will happen on Wednesday night.
Okay.
At the planning board at 7:00. I think there will be a certain amount of people who will show up to try to discuss why logistically to put a structure of this size on Mountain View Avenue is extremely dangerous. But I also think that what ultimately the planning board and, of course, the zoning board is going to have to boil this down to is whether they want to give them a use variance and challenge the law that was passed in 2016, has yet to be challenged, has yet to be tested, and it is the kind of law that if an exception, I suppose, were to be granted at this point, then effectively every residential district would be open to houses of worship or any other non-commercial, non-residential structure on these roads. So it's
But it's entirely possible they come to this meeting on Wednesday and say, yeah, we need variances. We're willing to go through the variance process. How do we do that? Let's sign me up. Let's do it.
Well,
right?
Not according to the application that they've submitted. In the application, they say, quote, the use is permitted or allowed by a special conditional use permit. That representation runs counter to the provisions in the town's zoning code. Essentially, they don't believe that they are subject to this law.
All right, but that was as of the writing of that writing, and so maybe if they hear what the town has to say or what the people have to say, they might say, all right, well, you know what? We agree with you, and we'll do what you need to do, but we eventually want this. I mean, I'm speculating here, obviously, but maybe they'll go through that process. We'll see.
It's almost unheard of for the zoning board to hand out a use variance. That's the history in the town. The town usually, both the zoning board and the planning board, they usually adhere pretty strictly when it comes to a use variance. You may remember recently we were following the story of the restaurant on 303 that wanted to get rid of a restrictive covenant.
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to get a church to buy the restaurant, and that didn't even get past the planning board. So the town typically adheres to its uses, and we're going to see if it's going to adhere to its law, because this, like I said, this has implications for the entire town of Clarkstown, and that is why we are paying attention to this story, and that is why we're expecting to see a lot of interest in what happens in this situation.
And that's Wednesday night.
And that's Wednesday night at 7:00, I believe, or 7:30. I think it's 7. I also wanted to just mention 3 pieces that we put out this week of note. One is that RCC is moving ahead with furloughs and the elimination of 9 jobs at the college in order to resolve a $3.5 million budget shortfall. We put that out on Friday when we learned that the trustees of RCC had agreed to impose this salary furlough, which is going to impact about 20 faculty and administrators, and we'll have a total of 9 days' pay deducted from their salaries, 1 in January, February, March apiece, and then 2 days from April, May, and June. So a lot of hardship there. I guess you can read the story to understand more detail, but that is another thing that we covered last week, as well as there was the much-anticipated Orangetown meeting hearing that was supposed to take place on the text amendment to see if it will allow Rockland Cider Works to operate, and really, I learned, I was getting ready to go to that meeting, and I learned at about 5 o'clock that the application had been taken off the agenda because there's more legal wrangling. So that just, I guess, remains an ongoing nightmare for everybody involved, including the town, which pulled the text amendment public hearing from its agenda, noting that even though it is not party to this litigation, I guess it just wanted to, as an abundance of caution, not move forward. So that's been stalled, and that just carries on. And finally, bring attention to a story that we did. We are very pleased to do the story about the Rockland Farm Alliance. It was sort of an update look and kind of a look at where things are at for them. And we all know that is one of our precious assets here in the town and of Clarkstown and in the county of Rockland. But that organization is finding that it is difficult, even though it has come so far in just a short spell of time. It's really difficult to maintain itself. And we write in the story about how donations have been drying up, and at the same time they had terrible growing season, as did so many farmers last year, and that they're not really top of mind when people think about places that need donations. And so we kind of wrote a story about just how important it is to maintain these assets in the county and what that takes.
They got to start selling cider and having bands on late on Friday nights.
And hope that residents don't object.
Exactly.
Yeah. So those two stories are kind of about the same thing. The Rockland Cider Works and the Rockland Farm Alliance. I mean, we have precious little land for this kind of thing left, and everything that I'm talking about, except RCC, but everything I'm talking about today comes down to land use. These are decisions that are made for not just today and tomorrow, but for generations, forever. So important decisions all around.
Until they change the zoning codes and use the land for something different.
Yeah, this has an impact.
Yeah, of course.
So that's why we give context to these things. That's why we write about them. We hope that the laws will be followed when the laws are important. We will keep a pin in this one, and we'll keep on keeping on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Tina Traster, of course, calling us always on a Monday at 9:15. We appreciate that as always. You can find out more. Go to rcbizjournal.com. Sign up for email newsletters and all sorts of information and news about Rockland County. Thanks so much, Tina.
Have a good week.
You too.